Rape and serial sexual offences cases now represent record 1 in 7 of all trials and court backlogs. We're going to read into this more from Byline Times, you guys. Let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is REGANELITE here with an article from Byline Times with the headline that rape and serial sex offenders cases now represent record 1 in 7 of all trials in court backlogs. As the overall crowd court backlogs hit a record 67,000, Byline Times reveals the number of the RASSO cases waiting to be heard has more than trebled in 5 years. So within 5 years, the cases have trebled. When it comes to these offences, and these are extremely serious crimes, guys. Obviously, let's be clear here. There are some horrendous crimes that people commit, but we're talking about rape and serial sexual offences, which can absolutely destroy. The vast majority of cases is on women, of course. That's not to say men don't have it, but the vast majority, when it comes to victims, are women. And it can leave a forever long-lasting damage on them, pretty much scarred for the rest of their lives with the memory of it, and it can have such detrimental effects to them. What's more frustrating is not having that case being heard, and not getting some solace, some justice for it. And I think that's the most damning thing of it all. We always look, what I see sometimes in life is that we sometimes always look at we don't pay enough attention to the victims and those who are suffering in these cases. And what, the criminals get thrown in jail and whatnot, but what happens to the victim? What's going to be there for the victim? Like if they've got family and friends to help them, it does help cope a bit, but for some it's much more different. And I think it's even worse when excuse me, I think it's much worse when cases not being heard, and they're having to sit around and wait for their trial to be heard, knowing that they still haven't had the justice put upon them for what they've done. And I think that's the failure of the state. That's the failure of the courts. It's the failure to get any justice for them. These are very serious crimes, and they need to be accounted for. And I really do sympathise deeply with the victims here. But why is this happening? Well, I think you guys know some of the reasons why, but I will share them a bit later on. Let's read into it, guys. So, outstanding trials for rape and serious sexual offenders have reached a record high and now represent 1 in 7 of all cases in the Crown Court backlog, up from just 1 in 11 just 5 years ago, according to a data analysis by Byline Times and the Criminal Bar Association. The backlog of almost 67,000 outstanding cases in England and Wales has reached to its highest ever level, more than double 4 years ago, and is continuing to rise, according to the Ministry of Justice statistics released yesterday. The problem is most acute among those concerning rape and serial sex offenders, the RASSO. In the past 5 years alone, the number of such cases awaiting trial has more than tripled to almost 10,000, also a record. So, awaiting trial, there's over 10,000. 10,000 of them. How can we allow such a high level of cases be done? Up to 10,000 people. It's insane. Delays can leave women waiting years for their complaints to be heard, with experts said risks pulling out altogether, highlighting how some of society's most vulnerable people are being let down by an underfunded criminal justice system. And that's the other thing as well. Because they are having to wait so long, they just give up on it, because you get to a point in your mind where you don't want to think about it, you don't want to go back to it, and you kind of just want to move on. You do want justice, but after a while you just get for some people it's just a case of, I don't want to think about it anymore, I don't want to talk about it anymore, and I just want to move on with my life. And I can't wait 5 years for this, or whatever, how many years, whatever it is, for their case to be heard. I just want to move on. And that's just how some of them feel, and I don't blame them for feeling that way at all. You really can't. Um, but they have to live with the guilt of knowing that their perpetrator didn't get the justice as well. G, who had to wait almost 2 years for her rape case to come to trial, during which time the defendant twice broke his bail conditions and she attempted to take her own life, told Byline Times that the figures make me feel physically sick. They make me feel unsafe in society and fearful for other women, such as my daughter, she said. But not only are the waits for trials huge, even if women get to trial, they don't get a fair trial. I got a trial and I regretted it. I was let down by the criminal justice system. There is no fairness in the criminal justice system. There is no justice system. The saddest thing is I would tell women who are raped to don't even go to the police. That's even worse. That just shows, we talked about how bad the police force are in this country, and this once again emphasises the failure of the police. If just on the police part, I mean, I know we've got to talk about the criminal court case, but the fact they're not even going to tell the police that a crime has been committed, and they're just going to just try to carry on with their lives. I cannot imagine what they're feeling. I really can't, and it's not right. It is just not right in any way, shape, or form. The figure, which relates to the MOD's data for July and September this year, shows a 23-year record high for the overall cases of backlogs of 66,547, making Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's March 2025 deadline of cutting the backlogs to 53,000 cases appear increasingly unlikely. He's not cutting that backlog, guys. This includes a record RASSO backlog of 9,792, which has more than tripled 226% from 3,005 in December 2018. There's no way they're going to cut that number, but I don't look at it as statistics. These are all people, these are all criminals. They need to be given a trial. It needs to be a fair trial. I don't like looking at it from a statistic point of view, but I have to in this perspective, unfortunately. That number has increased 5% from 9,337 in just 3 months from the release of the previous quarterly figures in June. The Criminal Bar Association says RASSO cases, which require specialist barristers and intense preparation, are disproportionately impacted by long-term failure going back years and symptomatic of an underfunded criminal justice system. Trials are often listened but not called to due to lack of court time, lack of a judge, or lack of a barrister to proceed or defend. And as most RASSO's defendants are bailed, their hearings tend to be heard after those who remained defendants need to have their cases heard quickest, in part due to their record prison population numbers. Tanya Aking, the chair of the Criminal Bar Association, said, complainants in rape and sexual offences cases need to know that they will receive sensitive and fair treatment in our courts, and that their cases will not be delayed for years. RASSO cases require the most skilled barristers to conduct them, are witness intensive, and require detailed and careful preparation at an early stage. Criminal barristers who specialise in RASSOs are proud to prosecute and defend these often traumatic cases involving sometimes the most vulnerable of witnesses. However, we need a government to respect and invest in the expertise of the barristers who choose this work. A Ministry of Justice spokesperson has said, people who break the law must face justice, and these figures show Crown Courts are now dealing with the highest number of cases at any point since 2019. This is a direct result of our decisive decision to let the courts run at full throttle, like lifting the cap on the number of court sitting days, keeping Nightingale courts open, and investing more in our buildings to deliver a modern and effective justice system, including in magistrates' courts where more than 90% of criminal cases are dealt with. Well, there's another problem as well, and that is a little thing called austerity. We had 13 years of it, and during that we had lots of cutbacks in lots of state systems all across the United Kingdom, and the courts were one of them. A lot of court buildings were closed as well, which meant that a lot of people were let off as well. And if there's not enough court cases if there's not enough courts and not enough barristers, judges, and whatnot to deal with cases, you end up with a backlog. And this is the real reason why we have such a backlog as well. This is the main reason. Them saying that they're dealing with it, it's just they're saying we're now dealing with the highest number of cases at any point since 2019. They're not addressing the issue at all. That's the thing. And there's a lot of things going on in this country. They're not dealing with these issues. The saddest thing about all of this is that, and it really is the saddest thing, is the victims here, who in the end are just going to let it go and try and live on with their lives, knowing that their potential victim could be out there. And everyone must be entitled to a fair trial. And to hear one person claiming that the trial wasn't even fair, my also belief is that because these cases are kind of rushed, which I do believe that some of these cases are rushed because they have such a backlog, they're trying to clear it, but they just don't have enough judges, enough barristers, enough people to do them. And especially in the cases like these, as it says in the article, they need specialist people for cases of these sensitivity, of course. How many of these people do we have now as well? It's just wrong on so many levels. It's a failure of our criminal courts, it's a failure of our police forces, and it's a failure of our government. Full stop. And whatever you might think of Keir Starmer, he was a prosecutor, and I believe he will want to have some kind of interest in this and want to make sure that everyone gets a fair trial of some sort. At least that's my general hope, because he used to be a lawyer. So that's what I'm kind of hoping for. But what do you guys think? What can be done? What can these courts do, given that they've had this, given what's happened to them? Should victims still speak out? What can victims do in these circumstances? Any ideas and suggestions, please leave them in the comments section down below. Hit the like button, be greatly appreciated. Share this across social media and hit that bell notification icon so you'll be notified of when I upload another video. And if you want to financially support me, you can do so by buying me a coffee or joining me on Patreon. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to catch you all very, very soon.